So, my channel is based on, and the most important thing to me that I show on my channel is the case of Darlie Lynn Routier. She was convicted in 1997 for the 1996 deaths of her two children, Devon and Damon. They were 5 and 6 in Dallas Correction in Rowlett, Texas, right outside of Dallas. That's what I've been doing on my channel for the longest time. I do this because I want to help be a voice for these children when it seems like so many people have forgotten them on the supporter side of this Darlie Routier case. Darlie still claims to this day that there was an unknown intruder that stepped into that house and killed her children and stabbed her. We know that she's guilty. And please follow the group Justice for Devon and Damon Routier on Facebook to learn more about this case. Or look at my playlist, Darlie Routier. Darlie Routier Fact and Fiction, Darlie's sister. I've studied this case extensively, and I know for a fact that Darlie Routier is 100% guilty. Her case has been picked up by the Innocence Project of New York, not the Innocence Project of Texas, but the one of New York, because the IP of Texas wouldn't touch it. They've had it for 6 years, and there's no new leads, no new nothing. So I am on the Justice for Devon and Damon Facebook page, which is ran by our friend Pamela Lakes Collins, who is an expert in this case. There's just no doubt about it. I'm not an expert, but I know it pretty well. I'm pretty well versed in it. I've never lost a debate with a non-supporter or with a supporter in this case. Never. That is Beja Jovel. She testified against her. That is me and her at the gravesite in Rowlett, Texas, where Devon and Damon Routier were buried. So this is my buddy right here. I just love Miranda Meehan. She's so smart, and she comes up with thought-provoking stuff. So I guess she was trolling one of the supporter sites, and she copy and pasted why they thought that Darlie was innocent. And I'm going to go through each and every point. It keeps me fresh on the case, and it also puts the correct information out there. And I'm going to show this information with receipts. Unnosed hairs, 2 murder weapons. Okay, this is it. The police say there was no evidence of an intruder, but there were bloody finger palm prints at the scene that do not match any family member. Also, hairs, facial, and limb were found and were not matched to any known person in the house. That's just simply not true. Darlie has not been excluded as a depositor of those prints. Hairs don't mean anything on a crime scene like that. There's a study where a FBI profiler took a newer vacuum cleaner, a clean vacuum cleaner with a fresh bag, and swept everything up on this particular carpet. Right? He ran it up and down, and then crisscrossed it, and then they took the bag, and they showed that it was pretty close to full of hair and stuff like that. So then they changed the bag and did it again, and they were still picking up more hairs, more that they did that a total of 5 times, and they probably could have done it more. Each time you vacuum, you're going to grab a hair, even if your carpet looks clean. If it gets embedded and stomped on, they mean nothing. And hair is like a hitchhiker. You could go to the store and you could be standing in line, and the person in front of you flick their hair back just a little bit, and you won't see the hair that landed on your shoulder. And it can hitchhike. 2 murder weapons were used, but only one was found. 2 weapons because of some of the deep wounds. They were too narrow to be made by the knife that was found. Also, blood from the 7-year-old was not on the knife that was found. Well, the wounds and the knife that made them are discussed by Dr. Santos and Dr. Dillon, who tended to Darlie. This is not true. There's nowhere in there they said that they were deep and too narrow to be made by that chef's knife. No, there were no two knives. If there were two knives, let's look at it this way. If there were two knives and they couldn't find one, that means when these two intruders got to that window, that they had a knife to cut that window with. However, inside the knife block in Darlie Routier's kitchen, the serrated knife was found to have lodged in its tooth, along with rubber seal material in the bottom, a screen fiber. And that screen fiber was compared from the cut screen in the garage to the screen that was next to it that wasn't cut by Charles Lynch. And it was said to be consistent. So if that intruder had a knife with him, why wouldn't he just use that? The theory would be that an intruder would have had to get in her house, get the serrated knife, go back out of her house, cut the screen, come back in, and then put the serrated knife back in the block. That's the only way the intruder could have done it, right? So, moving along, witnesses of the intruders not taken seriously by officers and not checked out, including sighting of a man fitting the description given earlier by Darlie. Never happened. There was no sighting of a man nowhere. No. Darlene Potter said there was a couple guys walking down the street, on Doll Rock, way up Doll Rock. Check this out. See testimony of Officer Jimmy Patterson prior to taking the fifth. Blood pattern on Darlie's clothes with DNA map is not consistent with her as the murderer. Actually, it is. There's no reason for Darlie to have blood spots of Devon and Damon on her front and her back part of the Victoria's Secret nightgown that she was wearing that night. Tom Bevel explained that the knife, the dots, and they're small, that are on the back of Darlie's shirt are consistent with her using the knife to stab and then come back down and come back down, and it's when you stop that motion of bringing the knife up, and then when you stop to bring it back down, that causes it stuff to fly off of it. Ugh. The police contaminated the evidence by putting many of the bloody items in one bag before the blood was dry. Well, how do you know if the blood was dry or not? Blood dries very, very quickly. They did use Albertson's bags, and you can see that they may have, concerning the nightshirt, they may have put it in with other evidence. But there was no smear on that shirt. In fact, if you look at the shirt closely, it looks like it's got a bloody knife print behind it, as if someone had held it behind their back while in prey of someone else. Contradicting statements within the four corners of the affidavit made by Officer Jimmy Ray Patterson used to swear in a warrant, but they don't explain what they mean by that, so I can't argue it. I know I've read the arrest warrant, and if they would put in there specifically what they think is contradicting, then I could combat it. Mistakes in the facts and affidavit used to swear out the warrant. This is 2 in 1. 2 complaints in one. So they're trying to make it as many points as they can get, but this is the same thing. Blood found in the garage and seen in exhibits, despite police statements to the contrary. The police didn't say there was no blood in the garage. What James Cron said when they found a spot of blood on a sign in the garage, he simply told the truth. I didn't see that when I walked through. That's what he said. No mulch under the window with slit screen, despite police statements. There was no police officers that said anything about mulch directly under that window. It was actually the prosecutor, Greg Davis, and his statement was as follows. Once you go out that window, you immediately come to a flower bed with mulch in it. Immediately would mean the 2 steps that it would take to get in that mulch. That's immediately. 2 steps is immediately. He didn't say, as soon as you go out that window, you step right into a flower bed. No, he said you immediately come to a flower bed with mulch in it. 2 steps is immediate. No one ever said that it was mulch. Why would they keep going on about mulch under the window, and then take crime scene pictures where there's no mulch under the window? Duh. Darlie supporters. Duh. Get out of here. Let's see. Screen was proven in court to be cut from the outside despite early police press releases and sworn statements to the contrary. Absolutely. The screen was cut from the outside. That doesn't mean that an intruder cut that screen. Case in point, Darlie Routier's couch that she was laying on and allegedly attacked on was sitting just in front of a sliding glass door that could be opened so you have access to the backyard. That sliding glass door that can be opened so you can have access to the backyard is 2 steps away from the garage window that the alleged intruder came in and out of. Simple. Darlie staged everything else. Why couldn't she have done this? Grab that serrated knife out of her knife block while the kids were sleeping, while Darren was sleeping. Grab that serrated knife, opened up that sliding glass door, stepped over the 3 steps to that window, cut it from the outside, because she wanted to make it look like somebody came in there. She may have knew the difference between cutting it from the inside and the outside. They could tell. Charles Lynch also, he could tell that was cut with a serrated knife, period. But that's all she had to do is slip out, cut that screen, slip back in, push that table over, make it look like somebody, that table, it was just on its side. There was a plastic flower arrangement on that set in the middle of that table. Jim Cron noted that none of the leaves broke off of it, even though it was flipped down. It didn't even damage the leaves. So she flipped the table over, right? The kids are still asleep. They don't hear a damn thing, right? Then she goes in there and she gets that butcher knife and she does the deed, right? First, she stabs Devin straight down into the heart. He's gone. Then Damon. And we can see from the blood map that Damon crawled 25 feet away from where he was originally stabbed at. So she stabs the boys, right? Then she's really worried about that sock because she knows it's got blood on it. She didn't want it in there. There's 2 different ways that she could have ran that sock down the alley. One is through slipping on the Reeboks that were Darren Routier's that were sitting by the front door of the house, tongues out, laces out, Darlie's blood around them. She could have slipped those on real quick and possibly went out the front door and around the side. I beg to differ that she did it that way because you have the testimony of the neighbor, William Gorsuch, that lived directly across. He would have seen her. But he got home at a later time in the night. So we'll see. You have to take that with a grain of salt. Or she could have simply went right out the back door. I know that the back gate was hard to open, but I know that she knows how to open it. I think Darlie's intention of getting rid of that sock was because it had the boy's blood on it. I think her intention was to throw it in that drain. And she missed. There was a bloody sock found 75 yards from the house, which could not be left by Darlie or Darren because of the timeline. See most of his explanation in closing arguments. Well, there really is no timeline. The time started for Darlie to complete her deed as soon as Darren Routier went upstairs. She had an hour and a half. There is no timeline. The supporters will want you to believe that the medical examiner said that Damon could have lived no longer than a maximum of 9 minutes after being stabbed. We think he was stabbed twice. We think that when Darlie Routier came back in the house, that after she got rid of that sock, she needed to stage the scene a little bit more, and she went over to the sink with that butcher knife and practiced. First, she practiced. She pulled her shirt out and put 4 holes in the shirt just to see, if the knife would get through it. That's what I think it was. And then she leaned her neck over that sink because, by God, she didn't want to ruin her floors. And then she did the slice and stopped because it hurt, and then finished it. And as she was doing the slicing with the knife, that's when she sees Damon crawling. And he's crawling towards the stairwell, apparently to get to his father. That's what it looked like. And she went back over there and finished him off. There are the blood map shows that where Damon was laying at, Darlie's, low velocity blood spots are found around him, as if she stepped over to him again and stabbed him 2 more times in the back. See, because Devon was stabbed 4 times. And then maybe she stabbed Damon 4 times, and then the second attack was only 2 more. That's what we believe. Damon definitely did move through there as he was wounded. The necklace that was embedded into the womb had to be removed by a surgeon. That's absolutely 100% incorrect. What she had was exploratory surgery. It wasn't even emergency surgery. It was exploratory surgery because she had a quick cut that's close to the jugular, and she had splurting wounds, and they just wanted to be sure that all that was sealed up. They explored it. Darlie's own words say, "They took my necklace off of me and pushed me into the emergency room, into the operating room. It was never stuck in her neck. It came right off. It was never. That's a lie. That's why this person doesn't name the surgeon that took it off. That's a lie." Severe bruising shown in police photos despite nurses' testimony that bruises did not exist. The bruising that you see in the police photos where Darlie's standing there holding her arms out, that took place 4 days after she was released from Baylor Hospital. While she was in the hospital, the attending physicians, the attending surgeon, and the nurses that took care of Darlie around the clock did not report seeing any bruising, starting, none. They didn't see it. Because if they would have seen it, they would have treated it. The only part of her arm that was bruised by the knife was the wound that she put on herself in her own forearm. These nurses and doctors are not going to lie. Before family members could see Darlie in the hospital the morning of the attack, they were denied access. They might do that while they're running a procedure. After the members insisted, they were warned that Darlie was in bad shape and they could better have a strong stomach. Well, why wouldn't they tell her that? The nurses and doctors, when she came in there, were under the impression she had been attacked by an intruder. They didn't doubt her at that time. They weren't doubting her. There was no members insisting. You can insist all you want at a hospital to see somebody. And if they don't want you to see them, you're not seeing them, period. Patient first. During the visit, nurses changed some bandages, exposing severe bruises and commenting on them. Nope. That did not happen. Never happened. Matter of fact, if you look at the pictures of her laying in the hospital bed, she didn't have any bandages on her arm at all. The doctor's testimony was that the wounds were very serious. Sure, they were very close, but superficial. For example, the neck wound came within 2 millimeters of the carotid sheath, but was superficial to the carotid artery. Depth of the knife wound was limited by a necklace which was damaged as a result. Prosecutors only focus on the word superficial. What are they supposed to do? You know where they got the word superficial from? From the attending surgeons. What are they supposed to focus on? They're saying, look, this wound, the doctors are telling them, look, this wound is superficial. What are they supposed to focus on? That's just stupidity. The first state psychologist does not agree with the state and believes that Darlie. The second state psychologists were coerced by the state because, so when somebody, the first state, the first psychologist, they believe Darlie. We can sit back and say, that's because the defense coerced them. And no. Second state psychologist was coerced by the state because of the discrepancy in the doctor's credentials were discovered by the prosecutors. That absolutely did not happen, and there was nothing like that discussed at Darlie Routier's trial about a doctor not having the correct credentials. That's just a damn lie. That's the only way to explain it. State denied existence of the first psychologist, exculpatory evidence, but she was discovered 2 years after trial reviewing financial statements and provided in response to open records requests. That is somebody that's living in Darlie land and who has been sprinkled with the Darlie dust. This, number 6, that was written by a dartard. Dartard. Because absolutely nothing in 6 is true. None of it. None of it. 7, listen to the 911 tape. Could not be faked. Sure it can. Why couldn't it be? Find the best actor to comment. This tape clearly demonstrates a woman pleading for help despite officers' testimony that she showed no concern. Well, see, Darlie knew that after she stabbed her kid, she only had a limited amount of time where she had to call 911 in order to stage the complete scene. Can't wait. Darlie's also was a fan of Law and Order, and she knows that 911 calls are recorded. And to me, it's scripted. She starts right out with an alibi. I was sleeping on the couch. Some man came in here, stabbed me, stabbed my kids. I was sleeping on the couch. What she meant to say, hey, I didn't do this. Some dude came in here. I was over here asleep. That's exactly what they meant. She didn't show any concern. And it wasn't just officers that testified to that. There were 2 paramedics that testified to that too. They don't work in the same building. Violations in due process, flawed logic, flawed procedure. Key state investigators take the fifth during cross. Oh, no. They took the fifth during direct examination. They were called by the defense because he wanted to do what he did. He wanted to show us some courtroom theatrics and get these men to plead the fifth. By denying the defense to challenge the accuser. When he took the fifth, he was being questioned by the defense attorney. That's his chance. He can challenge him right there. He's on the stand. Now, investigator Jimmy Patterson should not have been assigned to the case because his son was a potential suspect. His son was never a suspect. Never. They were trying to figure out who depended on after the trial. He owns a car matching the neighbor's description. Well, what was the neighbor's description? A dark 4-door car. No make, model, no plate number. And was a defendant in a drug-related drive-by shooting in which he was convicted. That has absolutely nothing to do with the Darlie Routier trial. Nothing. Another murder was committed in the same neighborhood in the same week, but this information was not given to the media, and the case was sealed until recently and is unsolved. That's a lie. That's a goddamn lie. Nope, they make shit up. They really do. They have to. Here's a real good misinformation. An investigator, who they don't even know their name, let's refer to him at who he is. James Cron, from Piqua, Ohio, about 30 miles away from me, concluded in first 30 minutes that Darlie was the murderer. He never said that. Within 30 minutes of being there, he said, it looks to me like there wasn't no intruder. And what's that intruder's name today? What's his name? What is his name? 30 years later, what's that intruder's name? The investigation was in a mode of building a case against Routier rather than investigating and seeing where evidence leads. She was targeted at the expense of following up on other leads. Well, I'm tell you what, you guys have had 30 years. What leads have you followed up on? And where's it lead you at? Where's it lead you? Right back to Darlie. First cop testified to seeing the husband in the front yard when he arrived. The 911 tape shows that the husband was in the house the entire time till the paramedics showed up. Who was the man that fooled the officer? You mean the Officer David Waddell pulled up and at gunpoint led Darren Routier back into the house because he was standing in the yard hollering for the nurse that lived across the street. Also, testimony of William Gorsuch, who saw the whole thing happen. He saw Officer Waddell pull up. He saw Darren Routier in the yard. He could hear him saying, "Oh my God, my kids have been stabbed." He recognized him. He lived there for 3 years. Officer Waddell, who knew that he was going to a scene where there was a stabbing, he saw Darren in the front yard when he pulled up. He drew his revolver and walked Darren back into the house. They say that phone, right, that you can hear Darren in the house the whole time. No, that phone was laying in the middle of the hallway. It was a cordless phone. If the front door was open and he was only there by the fountain, and Darlie was not too far away from him, standing at the end of the counter of the kitchen, that's not a very far. It's not like he's buried way off in the house. At 2:30 in the morning, when it's nice and quiet, cordless could pick it up. Him speaking outside. Who was the man that fooled the officer? Who's the man that fooled you? Read the testimony of Officer David Waddell and what he did when he found Darren Routier in the front yard. Any poor investigation technique. Crime scene video being used as training tape for other police departments on how not to handle crime scenes. Actually, no. James Cron went on to teach CSI after this. He used the Darlie Routier case, the recorded case of it, to show what staging a scene looks like. We all know this. And they still, to this day, do that. According to the author of the book, Media Tried, Justice Denied, Christopher Wayne Brown, a distant family member of the Routiers. Dana Brown, into Christopher Brown, married to Darren Routier's brother, Dion. They both appear on the Lisa Gibbons show, but we don't know that's them. You don't know that's them. The average viewer don't. She stands up and asks a question in defense of Darlie. The book Media Tried, Justice Denied is a fucking joke. Sorry. Even Darlie's coin appointment, well, he's not court appointed, but her pro bono appellate attorney, J. Stephen Cooper, on Gaston Avenue in Dallas, Texas, even him refers to the writer of that book, Christopher Wayne Brown, as a goofy fuck. Read The Cult of Darlie in Texas Monthly, and you'll see that statement right there. No motive and only convicted for one of two deaths. There doesn't need to be no motive. Doesn't need to be motive. We don't have to figure out why some crazy person does some shit like that. Greg Davis's opening statement makes it perfectly clear that trial was about the deaths of Devon and Damon. Sure, she was only convicted for Damon's death. That means charges are still pending in Devon's. They never go away. There's no statute of limitation. Damon, conviction for Damon's death, a child at 5 or under, carries the death penalty. If they would have tried her for Devon, she could have possibly gotten 40 years to life. And the jury simply didn't want her ever seeing going back out again into the public. Darlie and husband tried to save kids despite statement made by police investigators. Well, we know that Darren tried to help. We know he did. He states on the Lisa Gibbons show that he had been trained in CPR for 7 years. State manipulated hospital's personnel attitudes toward Darlie. There was no mock trial. There was no evidence of coercion. And there was absolutely no abuse of authority. None. I've talked to a few of those nurses, and even as the trial's over, they still believe that she's guilty. Witnesses providing exculpatory evidence were instructed by prosecutors under color not to talk to defense attorneys. Duh. if you are a witness for the state, of course they're going to tell you don't talk to the defense attorney until you're on the stand. When you're on the stand, you have to talk to them. This is just stupid. A fucking dartard wrote this. At the scene, paramedics were restricted by police. Of course, because Darlie said he went out in the garage. He went out in the garage, so they had to clear. They didn't know if there was an intruder in there or not. And they're not going to let their paramedics walk into a scene where there could be an intruder. Period. Care delayed to child still alive, Damon. No, they had to clear the scene. That's the safety of the paramedics. It's got to be first. The very child that Darlie was convicted of killing. She was not convicted for the death of the other child, Devin, who was dead before the first cop arrived. Again, the age difference and the sentence carried. Damon died after the paramedics got to him. Yes, he did. He died in the ambulance. Entire trial process was based on character assassination, not merits, i.e., grave video. When Norm Ken called Darlie Key, when he didn't call her that, what he said was, "Do I have to interview in front of this trailer trash?" That's because he was giving an interview to the news, and Darlie Key came up and said, "That's a lie and you know it. You're just running for office." So in response to her calling him a liar on national TV, he said, "Do I have to interview in front of this trailer trash? Because let me tell you something. If you see a major news channel that is doing an interview with a man with a suit on, and you step in it and say that's a lie, and then you know it, then you are fucking trailer trash." He's got a right to do an interview. Entire trial process was based on trailer and similar prejudicial false statements by prosecutors. Witness tampering through mock trials, which caused the witnesses to change testimony. No. And it's not witness tampering when the DA is consorting with his witnesses, ever. Because, my God, Darlie could talk, the defense attorneys could talk to Darlie and their witnesses anytime they wanted. It works both ways. Bugging the grave without a warrant, they need a warrant. They asked the owners of Rest Haven if they asked for permission. They didn't need a warrant. It's private property. You have no expectation of privacy in public. Denial of defendant to cross-examine accusers. Denial of defendant to show video recordings of full context because of the investigators taking the fifth. Again, this was written by a complete and absolute dartard. The reason that you don't see the memorial video that she's talking about, right? Because Greg Davis said, "Sure, put it in." He was telling Doug Mulder, the defense, "Sure, put it in. I have no problem with that." Doug Mulder refused to show the rest of that tape, and it's right there in the courtroom. You can see it. And the reason Doug Mulder didn't show the rest of that tape, which they say Darlie's falling down on the ground, is because he said it didn't hold much weight. Detectable incompetence of police covered up by false and manipulated testimony. Well, you can say that all day long, but you give no example because you can't. No follow-up with eyewitnesses and neighbors who saw the getaway car and a man fitting the description. Well, how would you know that happened if there was no follow-up? Because it didn't happen. There was no getaway car. There was no man fitting the description in the car. This is just a lie. That is just a lie. Now look how they don't understand things. They don't have a reading comprehension for them is ridiculous. Press release say that the husband slept through the whole thing, but the 911 tape shows that the husband was assisting Darlie in helping the kids until the paramedic showed up. Now, if you knew this case, you would know exactly how fucking dumb that is. He slept through the killing. He only came down when Darlie decided to scream for him, which conveniently the intruder was gone. So he slept through the whole murder. Duh. Then he ran down the stairs after the whole thing. And he assisted while Darlie stood there and did nothing but hold a rag to her own neck. Darlie waives Fifth Amendment to cooperate. Darlie waives Fifth Amendment to cooperate with police in effort to find killer. Darlie took the Fifth Amendment. Did you know that? Dude, you don't have when the police come to you and ask you a question, you're not waiving the Fifth Amendment. I mean, if you don't want to talk to them, you don't have to. But if they come up and they're trying to figure out who killed her kids, and they ask her some question about it, and she don't talk, duh, use your fucking brain. Some of these dartards are stupid as fuck. Investigators take the Fifth under cross-examination. No, that was under direct. He called him up to the stand. Matter of fact, let me show you. Simple Google search. Testimony of Detective Jimmy Patterson. Direct examination. By Doug Mulder. The defense called Jimmy Patterson to the stand. That's weird. But, you know, we're here about facts. Oh. Darlie waives Fifth Amendment to cooperate with police. I think that the question she took the Fifth on was, "Do you love your children?" At a bond hearing. I could be wrong. I know she took the Fifth. I not exactly where she did it. Who is the one that has something to hide? Nobody. And it's not cross examination. That's misleading. What happened is Doug Mulder got him on the stand and accused him of a federal crime in open court as far as putting that bug there. Back in '96, we weren't sure. We weren't. There wasn't cameras everywhere like there are now. They weren't sure about the laws. So since he was accused of a crime, the judge suggested he might want to get a lawyer from the stand. So he took the Fifth until he got a lawyer. And they made it perfectly clear that the only subject that they were taking the Fifth on was the subject of the bug. Doug Mulder and the defense were free to ask Jimmy Patterson any other case-related question, and he had to answer it. And they didn't. Credibility of expert witnesses were totally discredited after trial and reported to the media. I have no idea what they mean by that. The problems included incompetence. The goal was to convict rather than analyze evidence. See grievance hearing filed by Officer Lynch. I have no idea. There was no Officer Lynch. There's no Officer Lynch. If you're talking about Charlie Lynch, he was a fingerprint expert, a fabric expert. He was a CSI. He was not an officer. Improper readback to the jury by the court reporter. Court reporter admits to filing a falsified record for the purpose of hiding her mistake. No, Sandra Halsey did admit that she thought that Darlie was guilty. But she didn't say that she falsified record for. No, she didn't say that. There were tens of thousands of reported errors in the transcript. 33,000. That's three per page. 3 typos per page. There was other misconduct by the court reporter. We don't know what. All right, but they don't explain it. Prosecutor refused to prosecute her for perjury, despite the fact that the state paid $30,000 for the transcript, and she sold several copies to the media. It's a lie. She was convicted. It was a misdemeanor charge. She was tried. She was convicted. She lost her license after that. Her conduct delayed the appeal for 2 years and resulted in 6 hearings that would have otherwise. Well, it wasn't her conduct. Her conduct didn't have nothing to do with it. The mistakes in the transcript had something to do with it. But her conduct had nothing to do with it. So, this is what we're dealing with here, folks. The stupidity of Darlie dusted dartards. Now, there are some Darlie supporters out there that bring up some rather good points and can have a good case debate about this. But most of them, they believe that she's innocent based on this crap. All of this crap. Huh? Justice for Devon and Damon Routier. Darlie did it. Come see us at Justice for Devon and Damon Routier on Facebook groups. You can also join the Darlie Routier War Room on Facebook groups. You can look at the links in my description to get some of the rare Darlie clips, some of the stuff that we don't know, And my goal here is just to spread the word that Devon and Damon were killed by their mother, Darlie Routier.